What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and today we're doing our showcase for the other side of this brand new Super Sugo versus unit, being Kaido versus Monkey D. Luffy Gear 5. So, as I said, we've already talked about the Monkey D. Luffy. Make sure you go ahead and check out that video if you haven't done so already. I think Luffy is pretty phenomenal. He's got a lot of really neat abilities that is going to help you out in doing a lot of damage. So let's go ahead and have a look at Kaido this time around. So with Kaido, instead of being quick fighter free spirit, he's going to be a dex driven powerhouse unit. And this is shown in his captain ability, very similar to Luffy, where it is a rainbow attack boost, but it does scale higher the more driven characters that are on the crew, scaling between 5 to 6 times multiplier. He also gives 1.3 times health like Luffy, he makes tandem slots beneficial, and then if you have 4 or more driven characters on the crew, he then reduces special reverse and paralysis by 10 turns. This is some of the best utility that driven captains have ever had. This is the exact same type of utility that Legend Uta has, and we all know how good Legend Uta is, right? Reducing special reverse and paralysis by 10 is so good for a driven team, and there's so many other good characters you could hybrid with this. Like there's the superclass Doflamingo who reduces special bind. You could use Alba for whatever reason. Like there's just a lot of cool units you can hybrid with this guy to reduce even more debuffs that are inflicted to your crew. So good utility there, good multipliers, and then if you use a special to inflict increased damage taken on enemies, it adds 0.5 to that boost, which is stackable with other buffs. This is a fantastic effect, meaning anytime you activate increased damage taken on the enemy, just passively adding 0.5 to it, and that doesn't also mean that you can just use another special to further buff it even more, which is kind of crazy actually. And that does stack with double Kaido, so you can add like so much multipliers there, so much on those increased damage taken effects. Furthermore, with his captain effect, if you have a full team of driven characters, it allows your crew's specials with the effect that normally ignore immunity to only certain status effects, instead this time ignore all status effects. Now this doesn't seem as crazy as what it actually sounds. What it means is that if a character has a special where it says ignores defense down immunity or ignores delay immunity, this means that it will specifically ignore all status effects instead of just specific immunities. This type of effect is very niche, doesn't happen very often, so honestly I'm kind of like sad about that part of his effect because it's just not that useful, honestly. If it just made all of your specials ignore all status effects, then we're talking. That would be absolutely insane, but from what it is right now, it's just not really as good as what people think it might be. Furthermore, the final part of his effect is if you have a full team of driven characters and the opponent has 10 or more status effects on their side of the field, then Kaido's captain effect will boost driven by 6.5 times instead, and he also adds 500 times his attack in dex damage at the end of turn to all enemies for 3 turns. So that's cool as well. You can technically get around enemy resilience buffs if you have the right amount of status effects on the opponent's side of the field by the time you do your burst turn. So his captain effect is very good for a driven team. I don't think it's as good as Luffy's. I will say the actual utility effects of Kaido is amazing, but like the rest of it is like, I do think that Luffy is just a straight up better unit in my opinion in terms of the captain, aside from the utility, because Kaido's utility is god tier. So let's go ahead and pivot to his special ability. The special ability of Kaido is going to do a 10% health cut to all enemies, which is not an amazing health cut, but it's a damage dealing special nonetheless. He also changes right column slots to tandem that goes through block slots, and left column slots into Wano that also go through block slots. So very similar orb change to Kaido versus Yamato. Very, very similar kind of orb change. He then further says that he increases any attack boost on your crew to a 3.5 times multiplier, meaning you can have like some random support that gives you like a 1.2 or a 1.3 attack boost, and his special will make that attack boost become 3.5. Very powerful effect. We've seen it with Roger and Whitebeard back in the day. Very, very good effect. Now, if you don't have an attack boost when you launch the special, Kaido gives driven characters an attack boost for 1 turn, based on the number of status effects that are applied on the enemy side of the field. So if you use Kaido in content, you normally would want to use his versus effect before launching the special to add even more multipliers to the attack boost. So the multipliers scale between a 3 times attack boost up to a 4 times attack boost based on the number of status effects on the enemy side of the field. So as long as the enemy has at least 1 status effect, you're getting up to a 3.25 bonus. And then if you get 4 status effects, it's 3.5. You can get 3.75 if they have 7 status effects, but then if you get 10, you can get the 4 times boost, which is going to not happen all that much. It's going to be very difficult to achieve that, but if you're doing massive burst turns on Super Boss Kizuna, for example, there are kind of ways that you should be able to do that. It's just a little niche, honestly. It's very difficult to apply 10 status effects to the opponent. You know, if you have resistance down, each individual component of resistance down, so if you've got like a strength, dex, and quick resistance down from like a support, like that Vivi support, that actually is 3 separate instances of status effects on the opponent. So there are ways to kind of cheese it to get it quickly, but it's going to be difficult to achieve nonetheless. Furthermore, it says that if you have 6 driven characters on the crew when you launch his special, it removes 10 turns of Rainbow Shield and Damage Threshold. Very, very good special effect to remove utility there, and also applies 2.25 times increased damage taken through immunity to status effects. This is very strong. If you use this as a captain, this automatically gets a 0.5 increase to 2.75 times increased damage taken. If you run double Kaido, it goes all the way up to a 3.25 times increased damage taken, and you can still further buff it with other specials. Incredibly strong effects of increased damage taken. Now, even if you don't have a full team of driven characters, Kaido's special will still give you 6 turns of Threshold and Rainbow Shield removal, and it still gives 2 times increased damage taken, but it just doesn't go through full immunity. But basically, if you have the full team of driven, 6 driven characters on the crew, the utility is buffed to 10 turns, and then the increased damage taken goes through status effects and is slightly stronger. So definitely worthwhile building full driven, but you're not super punished for it if you don't build full driven anyway. So moving forward, we have his versus effect, which is the exact same activation requirement as Monkey D. Luffy, where you have to pass like turns. Every time you pass a turn, it adds 1 to the gauge, and every time that Kaido himself consumes a recovery or a Wano slot, it will add 1 to his gauge, and the gauge maxes out at 8, so it's not super difficult to get active. The activation effect of his versus effect gives a 30% driven resistance down and a 10% powerhouse resistance down to all enemies for 1 turn. And remember that these cannot be removed by the enemy, which is really, really strong. So this already adds 2 different instances of status effects on the opponent's side of the field. And if you actually use 2 versus effect in the same turn, with all the multipliers from resistances, it's basically like a 2 times bonus. It's around a 1.4, like almost a 1.5 times bonus when you activate the these 2 resistances at the same time. So you get a lot of damage just from this versus effect alone. And then he also will further increase your slot effect boosts by a 1.2 multiplier. This is really strong. We saw Luffy have this with attack boost, but now this Kaido does it for orb boosts. Very powerful effect. So you want to activate any orb boosts first, and then use Kaido's EX, or his versus effect, should I say, to then go ahead and multiply that orb boost to an even higher multiplier. Very, very strong versus effect. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about, which is the most disappointing component of this character, is his super tandem. Unfortunately, his super tandem is one of the worst super tandems in the game because it requires 4 units to tap in order to get the super tandem to launch. Now, there isn't really a condition, you just have to tap with driven characters, which is not hard to do, but the fact that it requires so many characters to trigger the super tandem, that's the downside. The super tandem effect gives himself a Wano slot through block, and then it also, that Wano slot, by the way, does go through super block slots, which is kind of cool. And then it also gives a driven characters a tandem attack boost of 2.5 times attack, and then changes the multiplier of recovery, Wano, and tandem to a 2.75 times multiplier for 1 turn. So the fact that 4 characters have to be tapped in order to trigger the super tandem, this should have been at least a 3 times multiplier super tandem. The fact that it's only a 2.5 when you have other super tandems in the same realm as this that are like 2 or 3 tap super tandems that are already 2.25, 2.5 times multiplier already, even higher, 2.75 times multipliers with 3 taps. And then you've got this guy which requires 4 taps, and it's a 2.5 times multiplier. So definitely a bit of a disappointment for his super tandem when Luffy's final tap is actually really solid, and then you've got, you know, Kaido's super tandem, which is just not good enough. It really isn't. So I'm really disappointed about his super tandem. I really hope that it's a mistake. Hopefully that it's actually supposed to be a lot better than what it is and they made an error, but I don't think that's the case. I think this is the way his super tandem was supposed to be built, and if that is the case, then yeah, it's not a good super tandem, and realistically, it's just going to be like outshunned by other super tandems that would be on his own team. Rush Sugo specials are just better than this. There's just no reason to use this unless if like this is the only super tandem on your crew that is actually maxed, and then you can abuse that, but it's just really wonky. So really upset about that, but the rest of his kit is pretty fun to use. And albeit the only thing that I really don't like about the captains of both of these units is that there's no cooldown reduction. So against short form content, it's going to be much more difficult to use, but of course in content where he gets cooldown at the start of the quest, not going to be a problem. He's going to be an absolute beast. But that's my thoughts and opinions about Kaido. Let me know your thoughts and opinions about him down below in the comment section. Really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.